Welcome to the one-point perspective workshop. Today we're going to draw this scene as it's shown here on the screen. It's an interior view of a room that's 18 feet by 18 feet square in plan and 14 feet tall. Let's go ahead and get started. You're going to need an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, landscape format. Draw a horizontal line across the bottom of the page about 3/4 of an inch up from the bottom and label this ground line. This is the location where your feet would be placed if you were a person standing in your drawing. Go ahead and imagine you're a person that's somewhere between 5 and 6 feet tall, and at the 5-foot line above the ground line is approximately where your eyeballs are. Draw a horizontal line directly through your eyeballs at that 5-foot mark up from the ground. We're working in 1/2 inch equals 1 foot architecture scale. Let's go ahead and draw the exterior boundary of our space. The space is going to be 14 feet tall, 18 feet wide. Using your 1/2 inch scale, go ahead and mark out these lines, leaving about 1 inch on the left hand side for the margin. The vanishing point is right in the center of your eyeball. This is the point where if you could draw a line connecting from your space into the drawing, this is where that line would intersect the horizon line. For our vanishing point, let's go ahead and place it 6 feet in from the left side of the building perimeter. And go ahead and label this point VP for vanishing point. We can now start to construct our perspective. From the outside frame, you want to connect the corners to the vanishing point, essentially creating a ground plane, a right side plane, a left side plane, and a ceiling plane. The next thing we're going to do is use a rule of thumb to help us establish depth within the perspective. The hard part about perspective is that you can't measure anything that's not on the picture plane or that's not right flush with this sheet of paper. As soon as things move back into the drawing or forward in the drawing, they are foreshortened and diminished or enlarged, and they no longer maintain their correct dimensions. We're going to use a rule of thumb that takes a halfway point between the ground line and the horizon line and draws a horizontal line at that midpoint. This is a basic rule of thumb that is actually helping us to create a square, an 18-foot by 18-foot square here on the ground line. So this line becomes the back boundary for that 18-foot distance. When we bisect this in half, it's basically giving us the same measurement as from this point to this point, but back into the depth of the drawing. From the point where that horizontal line intersects this vanished diagonal, bring up a vertical line. The same thing on the other side. Bring up a vertical line where it intersects. And if you're doing a good job, you should find that a horizontal line from one of those points would intersect the other point. And essentially what we've done now is we've created a square plane on the bottom, a square plane on the top, and then these are rectangular planes because they're 18 feet deep, but they're 14 feet high. So that's what we've done. In perspective, we've created a square plane on the bottom. One thing that's important to know about perspective is that anything that's on these original lines that we created, that's your picture plane, and any dimensions there, those are real dimensions. So if you want something 3 feet, you can measure 3 feet on that, in this plane only. As soon as you go back into space beyond that, you can't measure anymore. So what we're going to do all day long is we're going to measure things along these front lines, and we're going to vanish them back into the space. Right? We're going to vanish those dimensions back into the space in order to construct things back farther in back farther inside this room. I'd like you to make a counter over here that is 2 feet wide. So measure 2 feet along the bottom line. And 3 feet tall. And from the 3-foot mark, go ahead and vanish to your vanishing point. And from the 2-foot mark, also vanish. Then let's extend a horizontal line from this 3-foot mark at the front where it intersects the front of the left plane and where it intersects the back of the left plane. Hopefully I made those long enough. And then I'll connect a vertical line from where the 2-foot line intersects my picture plane, and then from where the 2-foot line intersects the back wall. And then you should be able to vanish from that corner, and it should intersect both of those lines if you're doing a good job. Since we are finished with that and I'm not going to need to erase anything there, I'm going to go ahead and darken those lines as I promised that I would. Let's bring down from the upper right corner, we're going to drop the ceiling down, very similar to how we did here, but this time we're going to drop the ceiling down, and you might call that a soffit, right? A shaped ceiling or a dropped part of a ceiling might be called a soffit, and I'd like you to measure, yes, you're welcome, thanks, over 8 feet from the right, and come up 10 feet from the bottom. And then do the same thing that we just did. Draw a horizontal line here, a vertical line there, vanish all of the corners back into the space. And then I want to locate where this stops. So I know where it stops because I know where that edge intersects the back plane. So I'll bring a vertical and a horizontal from that intersection. And again, so far you guys, I'm doing a really bang up job. All my lines are connecting. I'm going to start darkening my lines again because I'm not going to need to erase. I am going to need to erase one little piece. This time I'm going to extend these angles off to the edge of my page as if this thing is coming over my head, right? It's not just stopping at that boundary, but it's projecting over my head. Great. Okay, the next step, we're going to use this geometry that Keith was describing to you, where we're going to draw a diagonal. This is our perspective plane. We're going to draw a diagonal and use that diagonal to flip dimensions from our picture plane back into the depth of the drawing. So we're using geometry to make our measurements. So the first thing we need to do is to draw that diagonal. And earlier in the day, this is where it got a little tricky for people. Remember that this is the bottom square here. So we want to draw a diagonal from the corner points of that square. You can draw a diagonal going both directions, but just one will be sufficient. So at this point, I'm going to make a measurement along the front of the drawing, vanish it back, and where it intersects the diagonal, I can flip it over and put that dimension into the depth. So I would like to, here you can see we're going to make this little opening. That's a walkway or a hallway that's coming into this room. So let's make that opening. The opening is back 4 feet and it's 8 feet wide. So I want to make those measurements. I can find my scale. I want to make those measurements along this horizontal line, which is a little counterintuitive. So that's 4 feet. Do I want it 8 feet wide? Yeah, 8 feet wide. So there's my 8 feet wide. 4 feet and 8 feet wide. And then vanish those 2 points to vanishing point. Okay, and then the place where this 4-foot line intersects the diagonal, I'm going to flip this dimension over to this edge. So I can just draw a horizontal line from that intersection. And let me do the same thing here. From the intersection of the 8-foot width and the diagonal, I'll draw a horizontal line across the floor. And then you can draw 2 vertical lines to transfer that dimension up the side of the wall. So I've just changed the direction of that measurement 2 times, right? I took it back into space, I flipped it over so that it became horizontal, and then I flipped it over again, and now it's a vertical dimension. And I would like this doorway to be 8 feet tall. I'm going to measure along this vertical line up 8 feet. Vanish it to the vanishing point. And I'm going to go ahead and darken my lines so you can see what are the difference between the construction lines. Again, on this side, if you darken this bottom line, go ahead and draw it all the way out, as if this wall is passing behind us. I'm going to add a little bit of pencil shading here. We see a little bit of ceiling, which I know I'm going to see a little bit of ceiling. Anytime something is above my eye, above my head, anything above the horizon line, I can see the bottom of it. Anytime something is below my eye, I can see the top of it. So there's a little bit of ceiling there, and you guys should see that there's the floor is continuing into this hallway, and so I can see the floor. Okay, I want to put a column in the space. We're going to put the column in so that I can darken the rest of these lines up here and put some shading in. And the column is going to align, the front face of the column is going to align with this wall, and the left face of the column will align with this soffit, and then the column will be 1 foot square. So that's handy. We already have some of our geometry existing. But what I'm going to do this time, you can project backwards and forwards. So this time we're going to project forward, just to try to keep our drawing clean. I want to take this line back here, since that's the edge of this face, and I'm trying to align with this face, and I'm going to bring that line down as a construction line. To where it intersects the back edge, the back of my wall, the bottom edge of my back wall. And then vanish that point, but I'm going to vanish it forward. So I am using this back edge to bring a dimension into my drawing. Normally we've been working off the front edge, but the geometry works either way. So So bringing that back edge down till it intersects the bottom of my back wall or my floor, and then vanishing it forward. I actually need to vanish it all the way forward. And I want my column to be 1 foot wide. So from that intersection there, I want to measure over 1 foot. So that's a 1 foot wide column. From this, I pulled down the edge of my soffit. Where the soffit intersected the floor, I vanished that point forward onto my picture plane, and then I'm measuring 1 foot wide between the intersection of those two lines. And then vanish that back, vanish that new 1 foot width back. Okay, so from those 2 points, I can go straight up until I hit the bottom of the soffit. Let me draw a little horizontal here. So from this point, right, that's the front edge. So I want to do the same thing. I want to take 1 foot here, vanish the 1 foot back. Where it intersects my diagonal, I'm going to transfer that dimension over. It's skinny, it's really foreshortened. And that gives me the left face of the column. Now I'll darken these lines. Okay, let's put a window. Let's put a window over in this wall. So we're going to do something like this, right? Look how much we've done. The column, the hallway, the soffit. Let's put this window in over here. What's important to notice is that windows are the place where we cut a hole through the wall, so you will see the thickness of the wall. And in this case, because the sill of the window is below our eye level, we see the sill. Because the header of the window is above our eye, we're going to see the underneath side of that surface, and then we'll see this back edge. So let's do it. We're going to go ahead and align the front edge of the window with this walkway, so we can just use that same dimension. Bring it all the way across until it hits the left edge of the floor, and then pull it up. Let's make the window 10 feet wide. So I want to measure from my 4 foot line, right? The 4 foot line is establishing this location, and then I want it to be 10 feet wide. So I want to measure from my 4 foot point across 10 feet. So that's a 10 foot wide window. This was our 8 foot wide hall. Do the same thing. Vanish that 10 foot dimension. Vanish it until it hits your diagonal. Flip it around the diagonal over to the left this time, and then pull that up the side of the wall. From the 10 foot line, I vanished it until it hit my diagonal. From the diagonal intersection, I pulled it over to the edge of the floor, and then I flipped it up. From the 4 foot mark, the window 10 feet wide. Right, we want the window to be 10 feet wide. So since this front edge is 4 feet in from the front corner, now it's 10 feet wide from there. It's confusing, right? One's on the left, one's on the right, then you flip it. So measure up 8 feet from the ground. Vanish that 8 foot line back. and that'll give us the top of the window. What I want to do is make this wall 1 foot thick. So if you think you know how to do that, you can start doing it. The thickness that we see here should be 1 foot. Okay, so I'm going to do it right here, and I'm going to make myself a little construction line right here. You can do it anywhere. You can do it here or here or here. You can do it anywhere. I'm going to do it here because I like to draw the least amount of lines possible. So then I'm going to measure horizontally 1 foot. And I can measure it there because I'm still on the picture plane. It doesn't matter if I do it down here or if I do it right there. I'm on the picture plane, so it's okay to measure horizontally here. And then I'm going to vanish that 1 foot dimension back. And now I'm going to use the geometry of this to complete that. I just basically gave myself the window sill, and now I'm going to translate that up to being the window sash and the top. So I'm going to make a horizontal line from the point where this right edge of the window intersects the top of the counter, and make a horizontal line where it intersects that wall thickness. I'm going to pull it straight up. I'm going to make a horizontal line from where the top edge of the window intersects, and then I can vanish this back. Is that what you guys did? I'm bringing a horizontal line from that point over, and where this vertical line intersects it, I vanish from there. It's 8 feet from the floor. Because we're not going to have time to do the practice, the other classes had to do a little practice assignment on their own. I would like you guys to try to make this part of the drawing as practice on your own. So what this is it's measure down 4, over 4, create that curve, which you can do with your compass, or Joanne was tracing this tape. Vanish those edges back and create that back curve, and we're going to end up with a new soffit over here in this corner of our drawing. Don't shade the whole thing. Remember, it's turning, so you only want to shade. It gets darker as it becomes more horizontal, and as it becomes more vertical, it gets lighter. Don't you think it's so cool? Do you guys remember us telling you that there are 1-point perspectives, 2-point perspectives, 3-point perspectives? What's this one? 1 point. Not to confuse things, but basically what's happening, if I was drawing a plan view, if this is my head, these are my shoulders, and I'm looking this way. So if this is the picture plane that I'm drawing on, a 1-point perspective, it's as if I'm drawing this room and its face is parallel to the picture plane. I'm vanishing this thing like this. A 2-point perspective, again, here's my head, my shoulders. A 2-point perspective, the object is rotated so that the surfaces are not parallel to the picture plane. So that's what creates 2 vanishing points, that this angle has a vanishing point, these planes have a vanishing point, whereas in this one, since that's parallel to the picture plane, it doesn't vanish, but these edges do vanish. A 3-point perspective I can't really draw like this because it's one more time, right? It's rotated this way and this way.
So it vanishes up and down as well.
Yes. So what this looks like, a 1-point perspective looks like that. A 2-point perspective looks like that. A 3-point perspective looks like, it works best if you're doing really tall things. So it's vanishing this direction, right? You have vanishing point, and vanishing point, right? 3 vanishing points. Great for skyscrapers. Okay, let's do one more thing, and then we're going to go to the lecture. Let's put some people and some setting to this drawing. Remember that perspective drawings are really great for setting the experience of the place. So it's very wonderful if you put entourage, which is the word that we use for people and mountains and trees and skies, if you put entourage in your drawing. All right. Okay, so remember that all your people, their eyes are going to be on that horizon line. So let's put somebody back here in this corridor. It's actually very helpful if you start the person with a vertical line and you establish where their feet are going to be. So we want this person to be standing back here in the corridor, and we want their head to be on that horizon line. And then let's see if we can sketch our person. I'm going to be ambitious and try to sketch this person so they look like they're walking. It always makes your drawings look good, at least they're forgiving, if you put a little bit of wrinkles on the people's clothes. If I want a person who's standing up here in the front, again, I'm going to establish where their feet are. Let's put them here where their feet are. Give myself a vertical line, and that establishes where their eyeballs go and where their feet go. And so that your people aren't lonely, let's give that person a slightly shorter companion. Maybe the companion has a little handbag. Maybe he's a nice guy and he has his hand on her back. Practicing drawing people is a lifelong endeavor, so I would recommend that when you have free time, when you have free time to doodle people in your sketchbook. And then let's put some people way back here, right? Let's say we're walking through this structure, going to a little gathering, so there are some people way back here in the distance, and again, those people have their eyes right on that horizon line. We can make a little crowd of people. There's a party back here. Go ahead and extend the party over here. And architects always like to make their places look really fun, so no, these people are outside, right? That's the floor, so those people are way out in the background. Let's put one more person who's just about to leave our little space. So this guy's going to be standing right back here, just inside. In the earlier sessions, since Joanne had a little bit more time. Oh wait, before we move on, it's always nice to give your drawings some background. So Joanne was showing some mountains, so we can go ahead and start to indicate in some San Luis Obispo style background here. Since this drawing feels very retro, this is very like 1970s. Let's put some 1970s style clouds in here. Perspective drawing techniques have not changed very much over the years, so there's no harm in copying the old guys. She's only like 4'6". Yeah, nobody in this picture is taller than 5'4". If you had a taller person, you could. You know, if this person had a taller companion, you can fudge it a little bit. As long as you understand conceptually that the horizon line is eye level, you can fudge it a little bit. Let's do one more thing. Joanne made a whole nother drawing to show you this, but we're running out of time. So what I just want to show you is that, not that you should stand on the counters. I'm having a terrible time teaching my kittens not to stand on the counters. But let's go ahead and just try to draw somebody. You know, in this room, whatever you're saying or doing is broadcast to all the other rooms, so they're probably not enjoying listening to your stuff slamming around. But we're going to draw a person standing on the counter so that you can see in your spaces over the weekend. Perhaps not everybody's at ground level. Perhaps you find a space that has stairs or has a higher platform, and if you wanted to show somebody standing on that higher platform, how do you figure out how tall to make that person? And you really are going to use the same technique, right? We want to find, we'll make, again, a 5-foot person. You want to find 5 feet on one of your measuring lines, these lines in the front, and then we want to vanish that 5 feet back into the space. So we're going to draw somebody who's standing on the counter. Let me find the point. I'm going to put them a little bit towards the back. So I want their feet right here, and I want them to stand up in the back. So what I need to do is take 5 feet back and over so that I can find the place for their head. So what's the easiest way to do this? I'll just bring it over. We're just going to do it on the side so that it's the same technique that you've been using all day. So from the top of the counter, measure up 5 feet, which happens to be the same mark as the window. Let's make this person 6 feet tall, just so they're slightly different. There's a request to draw 6'7" Kevin, but we're going to just go 6 feet. Vanish that 6 feet into the space. And what you have to remember is that 6 feet, that 6-foot line is up against the wall, right? That's on this plane. So we actually need to project that line forward into the space so that we find that person's head. So their head's way the heck up there. So now we know where the feet are. The feet are up here. So now we can draw this person who's doing who knows what up here. Let's make him giving us a thumbs up. Okay, I'm going to run off to the first lecture. I think you guys should plan on packing up, but you might want to, before you pack up, I would like each of you to add one more element to your own drawing where you give yourself an idea first. I want to make a 4-foot by 4-foot cube, or I want to make something. I want to make a skylight or another window or something hanging, and I'd like you to just try to figure out how to put that into place. And then pack up. Go get yourself a seat. You guys have to also write songs.